Igor woke up to the alarm without opening his eyes. His hand automatically silenced the sound. In his head, the list of tasks was already spinning. Work, calls, meetings, deadlines. There was no place for him in that list. He had lived like this for a long time. Fast, steady, without pauses. He believed that control meant movement. That if you didn't slow down, everything would be fine. The phone was already glowing with notifications, but Igor didn't read them. Later. There was always a later. The coffee was hot, but he didn't taste it. The mirror showed a person without emotions, just a function. He took the keys and left. The car became an extension of his body. Here he felt confident. Here everything obeyed rules. Pedal, reaction, steering wheel, direction. An illusion of complete control. He entered the highway and increased speed. The city stayed behind. Rain started suddenly, but lightly, almost imperceptibly. The asphalt darkened, became slippery, but Igor didn't realize it. The phone vibrated. He just glanced at it. That second was enough for everything to break. The turn appeared suddenly, even though he had driven this road hundreds of times. A reflex, turn the wheel. But the tires lost grip. The car no longer obeyed. Igor didn't scream, didn't panic. He simply understood. Now nothing depended on him. Time stretched. In that strange silence, he thought about the things he had always postponed. About his mother, whom he hadn't called. About the life he kept pushing to tomorrow. About the phrase, I still have time. The impact wasn't loud. It was final. The world turned upside down, and then disappeared. Waking up felt like returning from nothingness. First, sound. Steady, monotonous. Then, light cutting into his eyes. And the sensation of his own breathing. Igor didn't realize he was alive immediately. That awareness came gradually, together with the silence of the hospital room. The doctor spoke calmly. Too calmly. You were lucky. That phrase was repeated again and again. But Igor didn't feel lucky. He felt emptiness. When he was left alone, fear came. Not sharp, quiet. It didn't frighten, it pressed. Fear of the road. Fear of speed. Fear that life could break again in a single second. Nights were the worst. When that same moment returned. That same turn. That same glance at the phone. Igor replayed it again and again, searching for the moment where he could have stopped. But the past remained silent. Rehabilitation was slow. Every movement required effort. But even harder was accepting that it wasn't only his body that had broken. The feeling of invincibility had shattered. Self-confidence. The belief that life could be lived on autopilot. For the first time, he was alone with himself. Without speed. Without escaping into tasks. And that was when questions began to appear. Returning home brought no relief. The apartment was the same, but he in it was not. The car stood under the building like a reminder of what had happened. Igor avoided it. For a long time. But one day he realized. If he didn't get behind the wheel, the accident would control him for the rest of his life. The first drive was short. No music. No phone. No rush. His hands trembled. His heart beat fast, but he drove. Slowly. Carefully. When he returned, he felt not joy, but calm. Life began to change, not abruptly, but gradually. He stopped postponing calls. Started saying important things immediately. Learned to stop. Igor understood the main thing. He survived not to live the same way as before. Time passed. The fear didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling him. It became a signal, to be attentive, not reckless. One day Igor drove through that same turn again. Without stopping. Without anger. Without trembling. He simply drove through. Life didn't go back. It moved forward, by a different path. And now Igor knew for sure. Sometimes 1 second takes away an old life, to give a chance to start a new one. After that turn, life didn't become easier. It became more attentive. Igor didn't notice this immediately. Changes don't come loudly. They seep into details. He began to look at people differently. At drivers in neighboring cars. At pedestrians rushing without watching their steps. He used to be one of them. Now he saw in each of them a possible story that hadn't broken yet, but could. Work no longer occupied all the space. He did his duties well, but without the former obsession. Career goals that once seemed vital lost their sharpness. Not because he gave up, but because he understood, no position is worth a second of inattention. People around him noticed the changes. You've become different, they said. Igor didn't argue. He didn't want to be who he was before. What surprised him most was silence. It no longer frightened him. Before, Silence meant emptiness that had to be filled with music, calls, tasks. Now it was a space where he could hear himself. Sometimes at night, he woke with a sensation of falling. Without images, without sounds, just a sudden awareness of how fragile control is. He didn't run from these feelings. He just lay there and breathed, letting them pass. One day, Igor received a message from a stranger. Short, careful. The person wrote that they had seen the accident, that they thought then, someone won't come home today, and that now, having learned Igor survived, they couldn't help but write. Igor stared at the screen for a long time. For the first time, he realized that day left a mark not only on him. It touched other lives, even those who didn't know his name. After that, he began to speak. Not publicly, at first just in conversations. About attentiveness. About seconds. About how a phone in your hand weighs more than it seems. He didn't lecture. He simply told what happened and fell silent. And that silence was enough. Igor understood one more thing. The catastrophe didn't give him a new meaning. It took away a false one. It took away the illusion that life is endless and can be lived later. Now he lived here, on this road, in this moment. And every time he got behind the wheel, he remembered not the impact itself. He remembered the silence after it. And it was that silence that taught him how to be alive. After that turn, Igor began to notice details that had previously passed him by. The road that once seemed familiar now felt alive, almost tangible. Every tiny unevenness of the asphalt, every sign, every change of light on the highway became signals reminding him. Life is unpredictable, and it cannot be taken for granted. He no longer simply moved. He attentively felt the space, the car's reactions, the change of weather, the behavior of other drivers. Every turn became a test not of courage, but of attentiveness. Friends and colleagues noticed the changes. Invitations to fast trips, parties, spontaneous adventures. Igor declined or agreed cautiously. He wasn't afraid, but he felt that the old version of himself, the person who made thoughtless decisions, no longer existed. Now balance mattered. Being present in the moment, understanding the consequences of every movement, every choice. Work changed too. Before, he rushed to finish tasks, overlooked details, relying on speed. Now he paid attention to every step, checked numbers, clarified information, thought through decisions for others. Colleagues first watched in surprise, then began to realize that the new approach brought results. He learned to accept slowness as a way to avoid catastrophe, instead of running forward blindly. Igor started keeping a journal. At first, the entries were chaotic, emotions, fears, memories of the accident, moments of guilt. Later, the entries became structured. He wrote about small things he had previously ignored. A slow morning coffee, fresh air in the park, the smile of a stranger holding the door. They seemed insignificant, but now he understood. This was life. He wrote down mistakes, failures, moments when he almost lost control, and along with them, the lessons they gave. Those pages became therapy for him, a way to strengthen his calm and value presence. Igor began to feel things differently in relationships with people. He listened more and spoke less. He noticed emotions he used to miss. He learned to catch tone, glance, a hint of danger or a need for help. That same day of the accident taught him to be attentive in every interaction. Even in simple conversations, he felt responsibility. Spoken words can remain forever. Every step outside his home became a new test. He could no longer afford to lose vigilance. Every turn, every intersection, every traffic light was a reminder that life is fragile. He saw how many people moved carelessly, immersed in their phones, in the noise of the world, unaware that one wrong decision could change everything. Igor felt responsibility not only for himself, but for those around him, who could be caught in a chain of consequences he now understood with absolute clarity. His former life, fast, loud, inattentive, was left behind. Igor understood that he survived not to return to the old rhythm. He survived to live attentively, to see details, understand consequences, value people and moments that once seemed trivial. Months passed, and Igor began to notice that life was gradually returning to a normal rhythm. But it was a different rhythm, slow, conscious, without haste. He no longer tried to fill time with everything at once. Every action had meaning, every decision weight. Even simple city drives became exercises in attentiveness. For the first time, he got behind the wheel without fear of losing control, but with awareness of responsibility. The first kilometers were slow, his hands tense, his heart racing. He looked not at speed, but at the road. Every sign, every intersection, every person on the sidewalk, everything mattered. Igor realized that control is not about ignoring danger, but about being present and ready for it. Days became orderly not because of schedules, but because of attentiveness. He continued keeping a journal, now not to unload thoughts, but to track progress. He wrote down not only fears and mistakes, but moments when he managed to stay calm, when he reacted consciously rather than automatically. Each such entry was a small victory over himself. Relationships with people changed too. Igor learned to listen, not to respond, but to understand. He noticed details, anxiety in a voice, tension in shoulders, a look that said more than words. This allowed him to build deeper connections and not repeat past mistakes when he ignored those who needed attention. One evening, he again found himself at the same turn that had changed his life. Rain on the asphalt, a light wind, streetlights reflecting in puddles. Everything felt familiar and yet new. Now he felt no fear, only attentiveness and calm. He passed the turn without trembling and without haste. And then he understood completely. That day didn't take his life. It took the old person and gave him a chance to become new. Igor learned to live with the memory of the catastrophe, not to run from it. He knew the fear would never disappear, but now it had become an ally, a reminder of the value of life and presence in every moment. He no longer wanted to run. He wanted to feel, see, understand. Every drive, every day, every conversation became a new lesson. Igor realized that life is not a race. It's not about speed, achievements, or outrunning time. It's about presence, attentiveness, and the choice to live consciously. And now, getting behind the wheel or simply stepping outside, he knew his life would never be the same, but it would be real. And that meant more than any speed or achievement of the former Igor.